Imagine being a spy. Not easy, right? Because things like that only happen in movies. But what about this? Studying abroad, learning foreign language, researching cultures, writing academic paper, becoming a professor. Not exactly ordinary, but still much more believable. Today I want to tell you about real life of a man who was both a respected scholar and a real spy. His name is Jung Su-il. He's known as the most famous spy in South Korean history. He was born to Korean parents who fled Japanese occupation and settled in Yanbian in China. He was a genius. He had a photographic memory. He could remember anything he read. He was the first in his town to be admitted to Peking University, China's most prestigious school. A rising star, he soon became a Chinese diplomat. 30 years later, he was arrested in South Korea for spying on behalf of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il. At the time, he was known as Muhammad Kansu, teaching Islamic history at a major Korean university. To maintain his fake identity, he changed his nationality twice and passed through at least 5 different countries. Though he was Korean to core, he grew a mustache and posed as a devout Muslim, just to blend in as a spy in South Korea. He married a Korean woman and lived with her for 8 years. To avoid suspicion, he pretended to speak Korean poorly and even mumbled in Arabic while sleeping. Through this feeling of life, he became fluent in 11 languages and emerged as a great scholar in the field of East-West cultural exchange. But what happened to that brilliant boy who once made his village proud? This isn't just a story of a spy. It is the story of a remarkable human being who carved out his own life in a world full of chaos. Do spies make the news often in your country? In South Korea, they used to, quite frequently. There's even a popular Korean saying, if you don't know it, you must be a spy. People don't say that as much anymore, but for decades, South Koreans lived with deep unease, the fear that their neighbor could secretly be a North Korean agent. Even children were taught in school about danger of spies and how to report suspicious activity. Let me quickly walk you through a few real spy incidents from modern Korean history. First, January 1968, a group of 31 elite North Korean commandos infiltrated deep into South Korea. Armed to the teeth, headed straight for the heart of Seoul. A gunfight broke out just outside the presidential residence. All but one of the infiltrators were killed. That lone survivor shocked the entire nation by declaring in court, I came to cut off President Park Chung-hee's head. Next, the 1970s, the discovery of tunnels. Massive underground tunnels were found near the demilitarized zone, large enough to move entire battalion of soldiers. And it wasn't just one. Several were uncovered in succession, fueling fear that more undiscovered tunnel might still exist. That anxiety spread across Korean society. But today, those tunnels are tourist attraction. You can reach them from Seoul in just an hour and a half by bus. Then in 1987, just before the Seoul Olympic, a North Korean spy blew up Korean Air passenger jet over Myanmar. All 115 people on board were killed. In 1996, a submarine carrying 26 armed North Korean agents infiltrated South Korea's east coast. But they were detected early and the military quickly closed in. All 26 either died in the shootout or took their own life. Gangneung, the coastal city where this happened, is one of my favorite places to visit in Korea. And that eerie submarine is still there for tourists to see. A fear of spies isn't just a story. It sits deep into the South Korean psyche. Politicians often weaponize that fear, accusing rivals of being spies or using paranoia to justify their action. Among all these complex episodes in Korea's spy history, one spy stands out as the most famous and the most familiar. A man who loved Korean food like kimchi stew, a kind foreign Muslim professor who always gave students A+ grade, and yet he turned out to be a North Korean spy. The shock to Korean society was immense. But here's the real question. How was this even possible in the first place? Well, for starter, just look at him. He looks totally Korean. Let's take a closer look at his life. Jung Su-il was born in 1934 in Yanbian, Jilin Province, China. His parents were originally from Hamgyong Province in the northern part of Korea, but fled the Japanese Empire's oppression and resettled in this borderland. From a young age, he was known as a brilliant student, the pride of the poor Korean community in China. He became the first ethnic Korean in China to be accepted into Peking University. His major is Arabic. At the time of his admission, he didn't speak a word of Arabic or even fluent Chinese. But he studied hard and graduated at the top of his class. In 1955, right after graduation, he was selected by Chinese government as a state-sponsored student and sent to study at Cairo University in Egypt. This was during the Cold War, and China was expanding its diplomatic outreach to the Middle East. Jung Su-il was on the elite track to becoming a diplomat. In 1958, he began his official diplomatic career at the Chinese embassy in Morocco. It seemed like nothing but a bright future lay ahead of him. But at the age of 29, he made a shocking decision. He renounced Chinese citizenship and applied to become a citizen of North Korea. It wasn't easy. After a huge dispute with his superior at the Chinese Foreign Ministry, his request was still denied. In the end, he personally wrote a letter to Zhou Enlai, China's second most powerful figure. Only then did he finally receive approval to change his nationality. That alone tells you how extraordinary his determination and ability were. But why would he go through all that just to become a North Korean citizen? Jung Su-il was man on the border, Korean by blood but never having set foot in Korea, Chinese by nationality but never fully accepted as part of Chinese mainstream. He later said, "It was in the Middle East that I truly felt that root of my people." In a foreign land, he came to a deep realization of his identity as a Korean. After becoming a North Korean citizen, he dedicated himself to his homeland as an expert on the Arab world. He even served as a translator for Kim Il-sung during official visit by Arab delegation and later became Dean of Arabic Department at Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies. Then in 1974, 11 years after changing his nationality, he suddenly took on a new role, a spy sent to South. He was North Korea's top expert on the Arab world. He had strong ties to China. He was an elite intellectual, even under dictatorship like North Korea's. A man like that wouldn't be thrown into a dangerous mission without consent. So one thing is clear, he must have agreed to it. Back then, many nationalities felt a duty to use their talent for the good of their people. Jung Su-il believed that espionage could help reunify the Korean peninsula. Of course, he had no idea how hard the journey would be. He spent 4 years and 5 months in secret training to become a spy. In 1979, at age 45, he received a mission, get a Lebanese passport, sneak into South Korea, and collect intelligence. So he headed to Beirut. With help from North Korean embassy, he took on a new name, Muhammad Kansu. But Lebanon was too unstable. He needed more practical nationality for long-term work in South. He moved to Tunisia, earned a master's degree, and worked at the research institute, waiting for the right moment. But Tunisia had strict ID law. Nationality laundering was not easy. Next, he taught at the Islamic Academy of University of Malaya. Still no luck getting citizenship. Then came a long chase. Australia, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, all failed. Finally in spring 1983, 4 years after leaving North Korea, he arrived in the Philippines. Within a year, he succeeded. He became Muhammad Kansu, the son of a Lebanese mother and Filipino father. His new identity made him 12 years younger. That same year, he stepped into Seoul for the first time as a foreign student. He had been exactly 10 years since he decided to become a spy. He started by studying Korea at the top university, all part of the act. Then he entered graduate school and earned a PhD in 1989. His dissertation is the relationship between ancient Korean kingdom and the Islamic Empire. The following years, he became a professor. Quickly, he rose to fame as Korea's top Islamic scholar. His writings even made it into middle school textbooks. He wrote op-eds on Korean-Arab relations, appeared on TV as an expert, and his lecture on East-West cultural exchange were always packed. He claimed ancient Korea was once connected to the Silk Road, a shock to Korea's academic world at the time. But in 1996, his cover was blown. He was caught sending a fax to the North Korean embassy in Beijing from a hotel room in Seoul. Before that, he had sent more than 70 encrypted letters. If he stuck with letters, he might never have been caught. Ironically, the part that never raised suspicion was him pretending to be Middle Eastern Filipino, despite being 100% Korean. 30 years ago, foreigners were rare in South Korea. People often couldn't clearly distinguish Southeast Asian from Koreans. Still, he put in serious effort to maintain the illusion. His big eyes and exotic looks helped. So did his ever-present mustache. He followed Muslim ritual strictly, daily prayers and all. That erased doubt from those around him. His former students say he always rooted for Arab team whenever they played against Korea in football matches. He even got married in Korea. To fool his wife, he spoke awkward Korean and even talked in Arabic in his sleep. One time, a neighbor thought something was off and reported him, but Korea's top Islamic leaders at the time vouched for him, and that was the end of it. In South Korea, espionage is a serious crime. Jung Su-il was sentenced to death. He had sent 75 encrypted reports to the North Korea, made 4 secret trips, and even told North Korean agents how to fake their identity. But in the end, he got 12 years in prison, not death. Why? First, the damage he caused wasn't that big. He mostly sent analysis and news summaries about Korea's tie with the Arab world. Sure, it was valuable. He was Korea's top expert on Islam. But what North Korea really wanted was military secret, tools to trigger in a revolution. Jung Su-il couldn't deliver that. He was a scholar, not a spy. His report, mostly copied from newspaper, hardly what you'd expect from a high-level agent. Even the identity fraud masterclass he gave in North Korea was probably useless, because Jung Su-il was a one-of-a-kind genius who spoke 11 languages. No one else could pull that off. Ironically, what he gave to South Korea was much greater. That's the second reason his sentence was reduced. Jung Su-il was the first person to bring the idea of the Silk Road into Korean historical studies. Until then, Koreans only saw their history through China and Japan. But he showed that ancient Korea had ties reaching all the way to Islamic world. This changed how Korea saw itself and improved its diplomacy with the Middle East. While acting as a spy, he also wrote books, translated text, and inspired students. His colleagues said his office light was always on deep into the night. He was respected, loved, not as North Korean agent, but as professor and thinker. Eventually, Jung Su-il chose to defect. He had lived a life for 17 years, from 1979 to 1996. When he was finally caught, he said it felt like a burden had been lifted. But there was a problem. His wife and 3 daughters were still in North Korea. If he defected, they could be punished. That's why he always carried a poison capsule, planning to end his life if he was caught. But on the day of his arrest, he happened to leave the capsule behind. And by then, he had realized something. South Korea was never going to fall to revolution. And North Korea, he no longer believed in it. In the North, he was just another failed spy. But in the South, he had a real life, a meaningful one. The biggest reason he changed sides is love. During the Asian Games, he met a woman while working as an Arabic interpreter. He got married. But imagine her shock. Her husband of 8 years turned out to be a North Korean spy, 12 years older than he claimed. At the first prison visit, she asked, "What should I call you now?" He said, "Call me Su-il, not Muhammad," revealing his true name for the first time. And from that moment on, she loved Jung Su-il, not Muhammad. She quit her job, visited him every week, and begged him to defect. Her persistence worked. It shows what kind of man Jung Su-il really was. In 2000, with warming ties between the Koreas, he was released under special pardon. 3 years later, he was fully pardoned. Even in prison, he kept writing and translating, but he couldn't go back to teaching. The doctorate he earned under false pretense was revoked, and that was bigger shock than the death sentence for him. He cried when he heard the news. Still, he didn't stop. He continued his research on the cultural exchange between Korea and the Islamic world. And earlier this year, in February, he passed away at the age of 91. Right until the end, he remained a scholar above all. Have you ever heard of Ibn Battuta? Born in Morocco in 1304, he traveled across Africa, Europe, Middle East, India, Indonesia, all the way to Beijing. And he wrote it all down. His massive travelogue, written in Arabic, was fully translated into Korean after French and English. The translator, Muhammad Kansu, also known as Jung Su-il, he did it from inside a prison cell. In many ways, his life mirrored Ibn Battuta's. He believed Korea wasn't isolated, but part of a vast web stretching from China and India all the way to Middle East. Only someone who truly lived as a world citizen could have had that vision. Most Koreans grew up believing in a single ethnicity identity. But when someone once called him a cosmopolitan, he answered, "No, I'm a nationalist." And maybe that's what drove him. He was born outside his homeland, returned after great struggle, only to find his country divided. He obeyed his government's order, left his family behind, and lived under a false name for years. And yet, he lived with purpose. He tried to do what he believed was right. He solved problems instead of learning from them. He pursued knowledge with passion, treated others with kindness, and never caused harm. In a time of chaos, he quietly wrote his own life story with his own hands. And maybe that is what true human dignity looks like. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like or leave a comment or subscribe. It really helps. See you next video.